What's going on, everyone? This is Torch contributor Frank Peteani back with another edition of Pro Wrestling Then and Now. Today, we are jumping back to 1995, the normal course of business for this show, as we've been doing all year, looking at 1995 wrestling and looking at WCW Uncensored, which was the follow-up to the last pay-per-view reviewed on this podcast, Super Brawl 5. I did that with Torch contributor Chris Maitland. Hope you had a chance to listen or watch here on the PWTorch YouTube page. And we are live on the Torch YouTube page. So hopefully we get some listeners here in a little bit. It is a little early in the morning, so might not happen. But we'll see what happens as time goes on here. You may be listening afterwards as an audio only on the Torch VIP network. So whichever way you're consuming, or just watching this later on. So whichever way you are consuming the show, I thank you very much. And today I am excited to bring on a first-time co-host. I've talked to him many times off air. He is a PWTorch.com contributor, and I'm going to let him talk about his work in a little bit. You've heard his emails. You may know him as Zach in Texas, but folks, he has a name, and he is Zach Barber. Zach, it is a pleasure to have you today, my friend. Look forward to talking a little WCW wrestling with you.
I appreciate you having me on, Frank. Hopefully everybody can understand this with our diametrically opposed accents here.
Well, I think you're going to be just fine, and I've been looking forward to having you. You know, we've talked WCW a lot off air.
Yes.
In fact, when we first started chatting several years ago, that was the first topic we really.
Yeah, it was. No, think about it.
Yeah. It was mostly '93. WCW. We would talk about a lot. You know, we would talk about Dustin being there and Steve Austin and British. And it's like, you know, my God, like, look at all the names. And it's, you know, it is crazy when you look back at a promotion at any given time. Even 95 WWF, as I'm doing right now, you know, Diesel, Shawn Michaels, Razor, Brett, Taker, Sid. You know, you think, oh my God, they must have knocked it out of the park in 1995. And well, they did anything. They did anything but.
Yeah, it was an interesting time, to say the least.
An interesting time, to say the least. Yeah, well, you know, and you know as well as anybody, I love Lawrence Taylor to the moon and back. But when he main events WrestleMania, you might have some problems going on there.
I mean, he held up his end of the deal. It was better than what Johnny Knoxville did a couple of years ago. So you know. If I had to choose, I'm taking LT every day.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to go along with you on that. Being a devout New York Giants fan, so and that means a lot. That means a lot coming from a Cowboy fan.
I won't hold that against you, Frank.
Oh man, I love it. All right. So quick housekeeping item here. I talked about the last episode of this show. Super Brawl 5 with Chris Maitland. Hope you had a chance to listen to that. If not, go check it out. Next week, speaking of WrestleMania 11, I will be covering that with my good friend John Mazzara, who has been riding with me on the 1995 WWF Look Back train. So look forward to that. It's an interesting show. It gets a lot of heat. It gets a lot of thumbs down, but you know, we'll talk about it. We'll analyze it. I think it might be a little better than what it looks, and I'll talk about that.
It's the peak of the Allied powers. That's
oh my God, yeah. I've got a rebooking idea to get rid of that nonsense, and I'll reveal that next week. Yeah, they Allied powers. My God. Got a couple of other irons in the fire, but I'll firm all that up. I don't want to say too much until I know what I'm doing for sure. Zach. Take a minute here. Talk about what you do for the Torch.
So I do the AEW Feud Tracker. It drops every Wednesday. It'll drop sometime later this afternoon. Just covering AEW, the different feuds going on, and giving my summations and opinions about that each week. So it's fun. I love getting to write about wrestling. So I can't really complain.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a good read. I suggest everybody read it, just to kind of catch you up on what's going on in case. I mean, it's easy there's so much product to watch these days.
Oh my gosh.
It's easy to forget what's going on. So it's a good way to catch up. And speaking of too much product, Zach, that leads us to our first topic for the show. We'll go over Uncensored 95 here in a minute, but one thing I do want to cover and get your opinion on is this was the time that WWF and WCW started to increase their pay-per-view lots. Wade had reported that in edition 325, which was the edition prior to the one that covered this event. And he talked about WCW going to 9 shows as opposed to 7, and WWF, which was at 5, will, of course, outdo WCW and go to 10 because, that's what WWF does. Unless it was just a coincidence, because they were always, they were always planning to do that,
Yeah, that was always in the cards.
Yeah, it was always in the cards. Yeah, just like with, Forbidden Door this year and whatever the hell is the house shows that they're running over there this year. But anyway, we won't get into that. He had reported that the WWF pay-per-views will have their own identity. That turns out to be the In Your House series, which starts in May. WCW brings back the Great American Bash, which had been dormant since 92. The other pay-per-view that would be added would be World War III later in the year, the pay-per-view that saw Macho Man get his first WCW. There he is. For those of you not watching on YouTube, Zach is sporting his Macho Man t-shirt. Man, I wish I saved, going off topic here, I wish I saved my Macho Man shirt that I bought, my uncle and I bought in 1988 after WrestleMania 4. Like literally.
Wow.
Yeah, like literally. I think he called, because, back then you had to call, you had to have the magazine, you had to send in an order, you had to send in a check. I mean, it's not like click, 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 and away you go.
Yeah.
So, but yes.
It was much more complicated. Yeah.
Yes. So very, very happy to see the Macho Man apparel on you, Mr. Zach. But one thing I do want to get your, all jokes aside, I do want to get your opinion on is, just the effect that this had on WCW. I remember in real time expressing some of the concerns that Wade had expressed. You're going to have overexposure of stars. You're going to be running through matches quicker, feuds quicker. The pace of booking is going to have to increase. And I mean, look, we have the benefit of hindsight, knowing that the industry is still around, 2 thriving companies with monthly pay-per-views now and 2 premium wrestling shows. I mean, in 1991, 92, that was unheard of,
Right.
But, now it's like, it's almost like watching a regular season of sports, like a baseball season, it's just game after game after game, So anyway, getting to the question at hand, in your opinion, what effect did this have on WCW? We talk about what killed WCW, and that could be a whole separate podcast in and of itself. But was this part and parcel to what eventually does WCW in, forcing it to be sold to Vince for basically a song?
Yeah, pennies on the dollar. Yeah, I mean, when you're already struggling and you have Ed Leslie main eventing your biggest show of the year and then going to, good Lord, I just, I can't. And then you're going to increase your pay-per-view, lot. It gets, you're asking for trouble. And then the idea to like increase their pay-per-view was like, we'll bring back the Great American Bash, which is fine. And then we're going to do 2 gimmick pay-per-views with the one we're going to talk about, Uncensored, and then World War III with the, let's outdo the Royal Rumble Battle Royal that you can barely see because it's 3 rings and we're doing this ridiculous like 3 camera shot with 3 different sets of announcers, and that was a cluster. So they adding more when you're not already like doing well, not a good idea.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at these two papers, and we're going to, well, I'm going to be pulling up Wade's review in page one, because it's a doozy, as I, excuse me, as you hear my Ring camera going off on my phone. I forgot to silence that there. Yeah, I mean, you look at Super Brawl 5. I mean, that was a real piece of work. Even Starrcade, which is supposed to be their signature pay-per-view, it's supposed to be their WrestleMania. Ed Leslie main eventing, as you brought up. That's a real sweetheart. And then
going from Ric Flair and Vader to Hulk Hogan and Ed Leslie. I mean, talk about a precipitous drop in quality.
Yeah.
I can't. I mean, I still cannot believe he actually made Starrcade.
And the funny thing is and I had Jesse Velasquez on. We talked about that show. Logistically, it was probably the right main event, because really what that show was about was the debut of Macho Man. So you didn't want a main event match to outshine what you were trying to do. And also,
no main event match with Hulk Hogan was going to outshine anything. But
what's that? I'm sorry.
I said no main event match featuring Hulk Hogan was going to outshine anything.
Well, that's that's true too. But the point is, it's still the main event of your hallmark event, and you're main eventing with Ed Leslie. I mean, I don't care what your excuse is; it's still a bad main event. You can't get around that. I mean, we talk a lot. I mean, everybody, hits on AEW, and I'm becoming a little more forgiving of them lately. You get a quality main event for the most part,
Yeah, like the Costco guy is not going to be in the main event of Dynasty. That's basically what we had there. I mean, the Costco guy might actually be a better wrestler than Ed Leslie, but
well, yeah, that's possible. And by the way, Biscuit, my cat, has entered the chat here. He's of course on the counter, and he's got to play with the computer as soon as I do a podcast. So that's
apparently he's an Ed Leslie fan, because
he just might be. But yeah, anyway, not to get too far away from the point. I think it actually ends up, and I don't know that it's talked about enough, the increase in pay-per-view. And you bring up a good point. When you're already struggling, with pay-per-views and not putting out good shows, and then now you have to increase. Now you're doing more of it. That's more bad, and
exactly.
So yeah, I think it did them in more than we realize, other than certain other people, brother, that had their hands on WCW. All right. Let's get to said pay-per-view, Uncensored 95. So this was the first of the uncensored lot. I guess in a way you could say maybe WWE got the idea for Extreme Rules from this. I don't know. That came more from ECW, but a topic for another day. The show itself took place on March 19th, 1995, so a little over 30 years ago, in the Tupelo Coliseum in Tupelo, Mississippi. It is now the Cadence Bank Arena. It does host a spring stampede in 1997. The building was only a couple of years old at this point. And it's many different like minor league teams have called it home throughout the years. And now it's used mostly for conventions. So,
okay.
Yeah. So a little under 6,000, according to Wikipedia. Your pay-per-view buy, I found this interesting. Your pay-per-view buys were 180,000, which was the same for Super Brawl 5. I found that to be interesting. Because Super Brawl 5 was not well received. I mean, I covered that and it was not good. And then it dropped off.
I guess maybe they thought Uncensored, it's just going to be,
Yeah. And Todd Martin talks about this a lot. A lot of times buys and attendance kind of trail performance. So,
yeah.
There's maybe, like you said, maybe that little bit of hope that we'll get something better and Uncensored. And then they don't get it. It's like, okay, yep, we're just going to give up. Because it does drop to 110,000 at Slamboree.
Well, there you go.
So, your announcers, as it would be for most of this time period, Tony Schiavone and Bobby the Brain Heenan, Mike Tenay covering the interviews because Mean Gene Okerlund had surgery.
Okay. I didn't realize Mike Tenay was here that early. That kind of surprised me when I saw him.
Yeah, he was. So Tanay was doing mostly the hotline around this time. So he was covering for Gene. I thought I noted this. He had just, I think it was either like liver, he had a liver transplant or something. He had surgery and was going to be out for a little bit. So that's why Tanay was covering the interviews and does not do a very good job. I will tell you that. Gary Michael Capetta is your ring announcer, and of course, Michael Buffer for the main event. Real quick, WCW main event was the lead into the pay-per-view. 3 matches. Alex Wright defeats Mark Starr. Steve Austin, might have heard of him, beats Tim Horner. And Stars and Stripes, Marcus Alexander Bagwell, and the Patriot beat Dick Slater and Bunkhouse Buck. I thought it was kind of stunning, no pun intended, that Steve Austin was on the pre-show here. I mean, at this point, you had to figure they were kind of pushing him out.
You got Steve Austin on the pre-show, but John Tenta is on the main card. WCW.
Yeah. You could pretty much tell that he was getting pushed out the door. And it's funny, Alex Wright, too. I mean, listen, not everybody's going to be on every pay-per-view, and that's one of the things when you're increasing the lot, you got to try to make it interesting, so you got to shake it up. But, I just find it crazy that Austin, is working the pre-show here. So, and Bunkhouse Buck, not that I need to see more of Bunkhouse Buck, but he was in major storylines. And, he shifted to the pre-show here. Okay, we get to a video hyping the pay-per-view, and then, as was customary, Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan. Go ahead.
That video, I just want to say that video intro felt like a growing up in the 90s. It felt like one of those like Too Hot for TV, like Jerry Springer.
It did.
VHS ads. It was like, we can't show you this on TV, but buy the, this is see the outtakes that are too hot for TV. I mean, it was it was a throwback.
Yeah, it was very 90s. And then I thought I got a real kick out of this. There was a previously aired video with Hulk Hogan in the ring, and you see this like smoke in the background, and you could see the Renegade. Tell me your thoughts on that one.
I just don't like. First of all, at what point were Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior like tag team partners? I mean, did I miss something? Because they were associated like as allies for 15 seconds at the end of WrestleMania 8, and that was it.
Yeah.
And yet they're so close that he's now bringing in this like cheap knockoff, less talented warrior.
I mean, they did tag at SummerSlam 91.
Okay, fair, but good grief. Like this was bad. Like this was next level bad. Like I hope people were not actually expecting the Ultimate Warrior and getting the Renegade.
And that's what, and I hate to sit here and bash for 2 hours, but it's hard not to. And even Wade in his newsletter was talking about it. So you keep teasing an ultimate surprise, but it's already known that it's the Renegade. So what are we teasing?
Yeah, you were like, you're teasing great value Ultimate Warrior. Like that's what we're getting.
Yeah. Like, well, even that might be insulting. I mean, regardless of what you think of the Ultimate Warrior, and I know that there's polarizing opinions on him, the Ultimate Warrior is still the Ultimate Warrior, and this is like gas station version. I mean, geez.
Well, yeah, this was bad. I forgot this was the pay-per-view where the Renegade debuted, and I'll talk about it more in the main event. But yeah, this was
yeah. I don't, in all seriousness, like I don't understand what their logic was. Like,
I don't either.
will tease an ultimate surprise and give you a version of the Warrior and hope you're not smart enough to pick up on it, or you'll be happy that, oh, this guy reminds me of the Ultimate Warrior. Cool.
Yeah. Again, that Hulk Hogan thinking, this will be a great idea, brother. I don't know. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's better that you up front say it's the Renegade and you'll keep teasing Ultimate Surprise, and people are thinking it's Warrior, and then you get that. And it's like, so at least you already tell people ahead of time, no, it's not Warrior. It's, it's the knockoff.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Would it have been better to just run vignettes, right? That the Renegade is coming, right? Just run vignettes, show, clips of him, whatever you want to call it. And then don't even have Hogan talk about it. Don't do the ultimate surprise. Don't do anything like that. And then just have him show up in the main event and help Hogan. Would that have worked a little better?
I don't know, because the problem is, like, the entire premise of the Renegade is that he's knockoff Warrior. So even if you don't tease Ultimate Surprise and all that, you just run the vignettes. When he's coming out there to the very sad, cheap knockoff, Warrior theme song, and like doing the mannerisms and all of that, like, what they're trying to do. So like they're not making the Renegade something unique to to the Renegade. They are trying to like do a facsimile of the Ultimate Warrior, and that's the problem they can't get away from.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just, not that what I'm suggesting is going to be worlds better, but I think it's better than teasing. You keep saying ultimate surprise, and not deliver the ultimate. I mean, people had to know that, and that's my issue with it. People had to know who the Ultimate Warrior was. So to keep saying that, even after you reveal that it's the Renegade, it's like all this mixed logic that just doesn't, and I was going through the newsletters and I'm just saying, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't line up. So like I said, I think it just might have been better, not necessarily good, but, promote him, talk about him, who he is, run vignettes or whatever, and then let him come out and help Hogan as a surprise. Don't even discuss it. Don't even, whatever. Just go out there and shock her. And that might have been received. I don't know. Would it have been received a little bit better? I don't know. But
in the moment, it might have. But then everybody would have went, "Oh yeah, he's still just a Warrior knockoff."
Yeah,
you might have got that, brief, like, ooh, and then that, oh.
Yeah, there's really not a big way around it, and even if I could pull up Bruce Mitchell's, I think he made a comment here in his review. Let me go to it. Oh yeah. So this is Bruce, quote, "And what about that main event? Nobody wants to do a job. We'll talk about that. There's a phony Ultimate Warrior. Flair can't wipe off his cake, his eye makeup, for God's sakes." Let's see. Chris Savisa, who was always very critical of WCW. No, I don't see anything about the Warrior here, but yeah. So yeah. Anyway, the knockoff Warrior was always a polarizing topic of conversation. All right, let's get to the pay-per-view.
Would the match we start with?
Yeah, and so I want to do the listeners justice. I have to quote Wade's write-up in page 1. Okay. He puts out a quiz. You have to listen to. Did Ric Flair dress up in women's clothing and women's makeup and come out of the crowd and attack someone, A, at Uncensored, or B, in the fictional Hot News? The fictional Hot News was like a parody ran in the Torch prior to the Super Bowl.
Okay.
2, was there a brawl in front of obviously phony concession stands? Obviously, because there were no fans buying anything, no money trays, no salespeople, and no brand names, where wrestlers used pink cotton candy as weapons, A, in Uncensored, or B, in the fictional Hot News. I could just see Wade writing this. 3, did 2 wrestlers fighting on the back of a moving trailer while bleeding all over each other actually have to stop the truck to make way for a church bus at an intersection, A, in Uncensored, or B, in the fictional Hot News? Did 2 wrestlers actually use a bale of hay as a weapon, A, in Uncensored, or B, in the fictional Hot News? Did an announcer talk about the arena being packed to the rafters when during the first match there were clearly dozens of rows of empty seats at the end of the arena, A, in Uncensored, or B, in the fictional Hot News? Did an announcer say, despite interference from another wrestler, a certain match would continue because there were no disqualifications at that event, only to have the match end via DQ for interference a few seconds later? A, in Uncensored, or B, in the fictional Hot News? So you get a pattern going here. Oh, it gets better. 7. Did WCW bring in a rookie muscle freak doing a fake Ultimate Warrior 80s style gimmick to be best friends with Hulk Hogan, A, in Uncensored, or B, in the fictional Hot News? Did a green announcer repeatedly pull the microphone away from wrestlers' faces at the peak moment of their interviews when he got his time cues and then snicker during serious interviews, A, in Uncensored, or B, in the fictional Hot News? He's talking about Tenay there, Mike Tenay.
Yeah.
Did 4 wrestlers and a female manager slip on a floor full of mustard and fruit punch, A, in Uncensored, or B, in the
yeah, we'll talk about that.
Oh, yeah. 10, this is the last one. Did a heavily hyped main event end with Ric Flair doing the job even though he wasn't one of the 2 men in the match, A, in Uncensored, or B, in the fictional Hot News?
Only WCW, baby. Only WCW.
So you could tell where WCW was at the time. And this follows a pay-per-view that 6 out of 7 matches ended screwy finishes. So you just kind of wonder what's going on in WCW at this point. I mean, anything to counterweight on with that? Or?
No, I mean he's not wrong. I mean, there was like a bright spot and a half in this show, but yeah, the rest of it was just, there was so much ludicrous spread throughout this thing. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the ludicrous, because that takes us to our first match, and this is a very infamous match. So it's King of the Road, Blacktop Bully against Dustin Rhodes. Blacktop Bully, folks, you might know as the Repo Man, or in a better gimmick, Demolition Smash. So this is the continuation of a feud where Bully had come out as a fan and attacked Dustin and caused him to get arrested. Colonel Robert Parker, his manager, had to bail him out with $75,000, and he wanted it taken out of Dustin's hide. Bully had beat Dustin at Super Brawl 5 via, I call it, the Ultimate Warrior Rick Rude finish from WrestleMania 5, where Dustin falls down on a suplex and Robert Parker holds Dustin's leg, and we've lost Zach here for a minute, so hopefully we can get him back. Hopefully he can get his internet rolling here. So I'll keep talking about the match. This goes a little over 13 minutes. It is won by the Blacktop Bully. So basically the object of the match is you had to blow the horn at the front of the truck. I don't remember if the announcers had actually talked about that, but they did talk about it eventually as the match goes on. And I'm just kind of stalling for a second, hoping Zach can get back on, but we'll get him back on here in a second. Anyway, to make a long story short, and he just messaged me that he is coming back, so we'll get him back here in a minute. Make a long story short, they're both struggling at the end, and Dustin is trying to blow the horn. Bully punches him, and then he blows the horn and wins the match. Wade has this at a 1. Quote, the match served its purpose as a novelty, and given the parameters, Rhodes and Bully did a good job, but nothing that spectacular in terms of athleticism or violence. The WCW post-production crew did a good job keeping the blood almost invisible despite both wrestlers bleeding. And that is the point of this match, as they were explicitly told not to bleed or not to blade. They do, and this gets Dustin and Bully fired, along with Mike Graham, who was responsible for producing the match. And let's see, we should be getting Zach back here in a second. And there he is. Hey.
Tech Gremlins decided to pop back up again, but
yeah, I thought you got pulled out by like Mang or
I was going to say the spirit of Mike Graham, because he knows how badly we're about to bury this match.
So Zach, while technical difficulties were getting the best of you, I basically laid out the match, and I laid out the finish of the match. I gave Wade's rating of a 1 and his reasoning.
Oh, that's generous.
Yeah. But the big point is that this gets Dustin and Bully or Barry Darso. This gets them fired from WCW, along with Mike Graham, who was responsible for the match. So I'll go ahead. Why don't you talk about the match first, and we'll talk about what happened here.
My first thought was, I would love to have been in the pitch meeting for this entire event, because you're pitching uncensored, anything can happen pay-per-view in a company that does not allow blood and is not and is skittish about violence, but you're promising this uncensored pay-per-view that's supposed to be crazy. And then I would love to be the pitch meeting for this match, because the idea of having a match on the back of a moving truck, it's ridiculous. There was no way this match was going to be any kind of good. It was going to be awful from the beginning. They couldn't actually do moves to one another. They couldn't do anything, basically. And then the way you win, the blow off of a feud, is to honk a horn. You're not beating a guy, you are honking a horn.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I feel bad for the guy who had to edit this thing, having to pick the wide shots and the shots of carefully cover the side of each of their faces that wasn't bleeding, and having to do all the fancy cuts. But honestly, I don't even think that the blood. I think the blood was an excuse to fire them, because in the issue that this comes out in, they're talking about cutbacks in WCW, and so they're trying to get rid of people. So they have a built-in excuse to get rid of 3 people. And I mean, it's not like Barry Darso was a big loss, but Dustin Rhodes had been a major part of the company for years at that point, and it sort of feels like part of the the Hogan era that is one of the main problems with Hogan, is that he's pushing out the younger baby faces that could in theory compete with him. And we talked about Austin being on the pre-show, and now Dustin is gone.
Yeah.
Alex Wright is about to get the shaft in terms of his push. Hogan is going, this is his way of sort of protecting himself, and WCW has the built-in excuse of, hey, they bled, so we fired them, when they're actively doing cutbacks. So yeah, it was a bad match. It was a bad concept. And the guy getting fired was nothing but an excuse. I just wonder what people in the church van were thinking when they drove past and they saw this truck and all the police escort and helicopter, and what is going on?
Yeah. I mean, I give them credit for trying something. I'm not going to lie about that, but I think the problem is above and beyond. It's a safety issue. Because
Yeah, there were like a couple of times Barry Darso could literally have fallen off of that truck onto the road.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here, people? Like,
I mean, listen, you get in your car and you drive to the supermarket, you can get into an accident. I mean, what if there was an accident? What if something happened? I mean, I don't know, it's a safety issue. But more importantly, you hit on what I had in my notes, and that's exactly to me. I was always suspicious of the firing. I mean, I understand, company policy is company policy, but there's suspensions, there's always ways of handling that. Okay. You don't have to necessarily fire somebody. Harvey Schiller had taken over Turner Sports. All right. And that's the banner under which WCW programming resided. They had moved from Turner Home Entertainment. And Wade had reported that Harvey wanted WCW to be more kid friendly. All right. That, along with Eric Bischoff being ordered to cut $500,000 from the budget. Well, he also reported that they were looking for a reason to get rid of Mike Graham and violating.
Mike Graham gave it to him.
Oh yeah, he gave it to him. And they, Dustin and Barry Darso, they figured were reasonable casualties. I mean, it gave them their reasoning. So I think that really was the reason why they were fired, and they just used the blading as the excuse.
Exactly.
So,
like, fire Mike Graham. Who cares? And Dustin, and suspend Dustin and Barry Darso. Like, that would have made more sense. But
yeah,
again, WCW. So.
As far as the match itself, I mean, it's really about the camera work. It's about the cutaways. I mean, you could tell that they're doing a good job trying to hide the blading. They're cutting to the helicopter. They're cutting to the there's like a van that's following them on the side. There's a police escort on both sides. I mean, they did set it up in a reasonable way. I'll give them credit for that. Of course, you get your Bobby Heenan comments. There's manure and hay. This is going to smell like Dusty's living room.
Yeah. Bobby Heenan was in rare form this entire show.
Yeah, I don't think he liked the show at all. He did not like it.
Can you blame him?
He was my God. He goes, in another quote, "You just saw where Elvis lived with all his brothers-in-law."
He called they passed by the trailer park, and he's like, those were Tupelo condos, I think he called them.
Yeah.
Or Mississippi condos.
Yeah. I mean, about the only wrestling moves I noticed, Dustin hit a pile driver at one point and a couple of back suplexes on the hay. Bully was trying to use the hay. There were at one point Dustin lost his balance trying to slam Bully. So I mean, that's really the issue.
Yes.
So
there was no way you could have a match on the back of it. Like, there's a reason that this has not been replicated. Let's put that.
I mean, would it have been better to blow off the feud in, a bull rope match?
Anything else?
Yeah. So, and at one point you had multiple moments of microwave interference, like the screen would
That's what totally your body.
There'd be a lot of static. So all right, I think that's enough of that match. The point being, it gets the participants fired. Dustin goes on and joins the WWF later in the year as Goldust, and I found it interesting. I wanted to talk about this. Wade had speculated that Dustin would work better as a heel, and I thought that was an interesting comment. And it's funny watching the WCW pay-per-views, and I've watched several of them. And I wouldn't have picked up on that.
No, Dustin was especially the natural, he was much more a natural baby face in that role.
Yeah. But the question, let's just say this doesn't happen. Is there an alternate timeline where Dustin turns heel and has, like, maybe he's a challenger to Hogan, maybe he has a little more, because there's only so much I think he could have done as a babyface,
Yeah, with Hogan there,
without just being Dustin's, Dusty's son, as opposed to, like then and now, Cody. All right. Cody, you could probably say right guy at the right time, but, he has become the top guy in the
and yet his brother still seems more like an actual human being, but that's another
topic for another day. But it's funny, like I don't know, as a baby face, I feel like he might have done everything he was going to do.
Yeah, in that like incarnation of WCW for sure, because the Hogan wasn't moving out of the way, so
right.
There was no, his upward mobility was pretty much.
He had a little bit of a mean streak to him.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting that he mentioned that, and as it would turn out, he would debut as a heel as Goldust later in the year. So okay, Mike Tenay interviews Arn Anderson and Robert Parker. Arn discusses the upcoming match with Johnny B. Bad. Parker covers the incident with Dustin and the match coming up with Jim Duggan against Ming. So it's a martial arts match. This was set up at the previous pay-per-view where Meng attacks Jim Duggan after he beats Bunkhouse Buck. Meng was then not allowed to be at ringside in the match between Dustin Rhodes and the Blacktop Bully later in the show. This match goes a little over 7 minutes. It's won by Meng. So Robert Parker jumps on the apron, which he does in a lot of his matches, of course, and Duggan goes after him. Sonny Ono, who's the special referee, tries to pull Duggan away, and they're both holding Duggan. Like, Parker's got one arm and Sonny Ono's got the other arm. Meng gives him a super kick. It wasn't called a super kick at the time, but he gives him that and then scores the pin. Wade's rating, dud. Quotes.
Yeah, that's right. That's accurate.
As far as storyline, it put Meng over as a tough wrestler. I don't know about that. For pinning Duggan relatively cleanly. Although the comedy elements with Duggan and the special ref, we'll talk about the comedy in a minute here, made Meng out to be somewhat of a comedy character too. That I agree with. The match had nothing of substance athletically.
Well, I mean, Jim Duggan is one of the participants, so it was never going to have anything of substance athletically.
Yeah.
He was also well past his prime at this point. And so it's just like, I kept trying to figure out what was martial arts about this match. That was, first of all, putting Jim Duggan in a martial arts match is, it takes a special kind of stupid to do that. But there was nothing martial arts about this match. The only martial arts about this match was like the decorum they had to follow and Sonny Ono being the referee. And I guess this was his first appearance before he was turned into like a Japanese caricature for the rest of his time in WCW. But like the only martial artsy thing in this match was like the bowing to each other.
Yes.
That was it. Because the rest of it was just Duggan throwing fists and Meng being Meng. And so it's like, this match it made no sense, like from here are the guidelines at least, because you can't say rules because there are no rules. When you think about like the whole pay-per-view, there are just no rules. So the guidelines for this particular match, there weren't any other than bow to your opponent. And yes, it was a bad match, and I could not figure out. I kept wondering, was Sonny Ono in like Parker's pocket, like because he was clearly holding the guy, and then Duggan kicking the face. Yeah, it was.
We got a Zahn in the chat here. Hacksaw don't understand the idea of martial arts for some reason. I mean, I think that's that's an issue with this match. I mean, did he not? Sonny is trying to get Meng and Duggan to bow to each other before the match, and Duggan keeps refusing. He keeps doing the ho, and it's like I thought, okay, it's funny the first time, maybe the second time, like the sixth time, it's a little old now at this point. So it was getting annoying above anything else. But yeah, I just don't understand it. And it's funny, the next match has a kind of similar tone to it because we have two styles wrestling
But
each
it
other.
worked a lot better.
Yeah. But yeah, he did not get the concept of it. Just going through some of the highlights here. Yeah, you mentioned, Duggan is just punching and kicking and doing wrestling moves. Meng is the only one doing like chops and kicks and things like that. There is a nerve hold at one point, and the crowd does pop at 1 minute or at one point for Duggan's clothesline. Does a 3-point stance and the clothesline. So, there was a little bit of excitement, but I agree with you. Sonny certainly appeared to be in Parker's pocket as they're clearly holding him. So, and that causes Meng to get the win. My thing is I don't think, and this was the point I wanted to bring up. They made it seem like Meng never wrestled before.
Yeah.
Right?
It's weird. I'm like, are people supposed to buy that? Like, pretend like they've never seen Ming before? Like, okay.
Yeah, it's funny. They made it seem like, oh, he's making the transition from bodyguard or whatever it was to wrestler. It's like, well, he has wrestled before. We do. Most fans are pretty wise. They do know who he is. So, yeah, and I just don't, I was going through the newsletters and because I was trying to figure out why was a martial arts match announced, and I couldn't find a legitimate reason for it. It's
another gimmick for the pay-per-view, basically.
Yeah, that's it pretty much. So, at least, the only thing I could say is at least there was follow-up on what took place on the previous show. So there
and it was fairly quick.
There was that. But yeah, you could have just, it's Hacksaw Jim Duggan. You could have just booked Meng Strong. Meng was rumored to be a challenger for the world title, which doesn't happen.
I don't think Hogan wants no parts of Meng.
No. He does become a challenger to Sting though for the U.S. title later in the year. So you could have just
I don't think Hogan would have been able to convince Ming of anything. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I think that's his. I think that's one of his boys.
Oh, okay.
Hogan and Megan, huh? All right, so that's a misprint. It's all good. Hogan and Meng could have been fun. Yeah, that would have been an interesting. That would have been an interesting challenge. I don't recall if they were still doing the Clash of the Champions at this point. I'm not sure when that stopped, but
97.
It was 97. Okay, so yeah, that could have been a clash match. All right. Anything more to say about this, Zach? I think
no.
I think we covered it. Match 3. This is a boxing match. This is
boxer versus wrestler.
Boxer versus wrestler. Yes. Johnny B. Bad against Arn Anderson. Johnny B. Bad with Rock Finnegan in his corner, and Arn with Colonel Robert Parker. So more 3 matches with people from Robert Parker's stable. This goes back to when Anderson had replaced the Honky Tonk Man at Starrcade 94, challenging Johnny for the WCW Television Championship. What's that?
Oh, my computer's doing weird things.
Okay. Hopefully it doesn't abandon you.
Nope.
Arn would win the television title in January on Main Event. Johnny, Mark Merrow, has boxing experience, and he participated in the Golden Gloves tournament, but retired from boxing and moved on to wrestling due to a broken nose. So this is according to Wikipedia anyway. Excuse me. The match is scheduled for 10 3-minute rounds. You could win by pin or submission, so the wrestling part does count, or a 10-count knockout. So a little bit of a unique match. This goes a little under cumulatively 9.5 minutes. Johnny wins it via knockout. So Rock Finnegan, who I mentioned is in Johnny's corner, puts a bucket on Arn's head during the rest period between rounds 2 and 3. Johnny punches him twice, and that knocks him out. Finnegan had loosened Johnny's left glove for him to take it off. That indicated that might have been something taped on his hand. Wade had this at a 1/4 star, did not really comment on it. But what is Zach's rating and comments on this match?
I mean, I would give it, I would give it, a star and a half, 2 stars. It was fine.
Yeah.
Like, it might have been the best version of this kind of match that I've seen.
Here's the thing. Before you say anything, here's the thing, though. Like, and I was reading through the newsletters, and this again, I didn't see a reason why there was a boxing match. Why would there be a boxing match between these two? I mean, I know Johnny has boxing experience, but he had been wrestling for some time. And I guess, to your point earlier about the martial arts match, maybe they wanted a gimmick match, another gimmick match for the pay-per-view. So anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but factor that into, your analysis and comments. And you're on mute, Zach.
I don't know why they did the boxing element, but I mean, I think it worked. Merrill's a decent boxer. What I liked was that, like, Arn cheated during one of the rest periods and, like, attacked Merrill, and that's how he got his little advantage, because he was pretty much getting whooped up to then.
Yep.
And then Merrill's trainer was like, "No rules, so we can cheat too," which makes sense. And that's when we put the bucket on Arn's head, and Merrill punched it and then took his glove off and, like, knocked Arn out. So I mean, it made sense. So yeah, I mean, this was, like I said, this is the best version of a boxer versus wrestler match that I can remember. And I just kind of wish, and I wonder if Merrill wishes he'd somehow stayed in WCW, because boy, did his career go the opposite direction when he went north and brought his wife to TV, and that pretty much was the end of. And then he took on the actual boxer gimmick, and it just did not do him any favors.
Yeah. I mean, he would debut a year later as the Wild Man Mark Merrow, and would feud with Triple H, ironically, right out of the gate. But yeah, I mean, this, I don't know. I mean, it's 2 straight matches with 2 styles working against each other with an interference finish. So I'm not sure that was good to do, but yeah, I guess, with it being no rules, but that would get thrown out here. The next match, we'll talk about that. I don't know. I mean, the crowd liked it. Crowd was into it.
Yeah.
So that's what ends up mattering. Excuse me. Let me just see here. A couple of notes that I have. Bobby Heenan at one point says that, "Oh, Johnny can't try to wrestle Arn," and I'm sitting here saying, he was a television champion and he has wrestled previously. So what's that all about? You mentioned Arn cheating. Johnny has the edge mostly in round 2, and then Arn gives him like a DDT during the rest period, and then he attacks him out of the blue and, like, throws him over the top. And then round 3 just starts. In round 3, Parker holds up a stool and Arn whips Johnny onto it. So getting into the no rules here. And then the managers get involved with the participants. Finnegan gets involved with Arn, and Parker attacks Johnny. So anyway, yeah, I mean, entertaining. Wasn't particularly high on it myself, but it was what it was. Arn goes on. He loses the TV title to, of all people, the Renegade. And Johnny has a U.S. title run later in the year. Azan in the chat here. It was a better boxing match than Mr. T and Piper, and Azan is referring to WrestleMania 2, of course. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen that. I haven't seen that match probably since I rented WrestleMania 2, and WrestleMania 2 is not exactly an event I go back and rewatch, so I'll have to. I was thinking about that match too, Azan, so I'll have to go back and watch it. Zach, you're off camera and you're muted. There he is.
Sorry, I had to attend to something, but I'm back.
No problem. I was just bringing Azan in the chat brought up the boxing match between Mr. T and Piper.
That was a debacle.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't seen that in a long time. WrestleMania 2 is not exactly something I try to go back.
Nobody goes back to watch that. But I think the problem was that it was a boxing match. Like, if it was, the fact that this was like boxer versus wrestler, so you had the wrestler could wrestle and the boxer could box, and so there was like, that made more sense than like trying to make a wrestler box.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to probably watch it again, maybe to think. I mean, you're certainly turning me around on it, but I'd have to watch it again to kind of see how I feel.
I'm just glad we didn't get to 10 rounds. Like they said, we're scheduled for 10 3-minute rounds. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, that would have been a slog. With these two. Well, speaking of what could have been a slog, we have match number 4, Avalanche against the Macho Man Randy Savage. So Savage, along with Sting, had beaten Avalanche and Big Bubba Rogers on the previous pay-per-view, with Sting pinning Avalanche. The parties had split up, and they had individual matches on this show. And Shivani highlights that there are no rules, which is a harbinger of things to come. This goes a little under 12 minutes, and Savage wins the match, folks. Yes, via a disqualification in a match with no rules.
That was the official call. The Savage won, but
well, Flair interfered, and they rang the bell.
Yeah, I mean, I just the match got thrown out. So let me just say, Randy Savage is a miracle worker. He got a good match out of the Ultimate. He got the best match the Ultimate Warrior ever had. Mm-hmm. Like that, hands down. That match at WrestleMania 7 was the highlight of Warrior's career.
Sure.
And he actually got a good match out of John Tenta here. Like this was not terrible. What was weird was they mentioned that like Nick Bockwinkel had said Ric Flair. I think it was earlier in the show that Nick Bockwinkel had said Ric Flair can't be on any WCW TV or whatever because he was retired and all that. But they also said Nick Bockwinkel was not at the show because it was uncensored and anything goes. So I didn't really understand why Flair had to come out and drag. Like he's not hiding from Nick Bockwinkel or trying to sneak onto the show. Like they mentioned he was going to be in Vader's corner.
Yeah.
So they like pre-announced that Flair was there. So I didn't really understand why he was like coming out in drag.
I have a comment. I have a thought on that, but we'll get to it in a second.
That didn't make a ton of sense. And the other thing was, yes, the finish was bizarre because how do you toss a match out? Because I just thought they just said no contest when there are no rules. Like I don't understand that. Like there has to be you make up your mind. Like, are there no rules? So, you can't throw the match out. Like, Tenta can't take a pin. Like, this seems like an easy, like, win for the Macho Man. Like, toss Flair from the ring, drop the elbow, and go home. Like, I don't understand why they felt compelled to throw the match out. They certainly could not have been protecting John Tenta.
No, and it was more about setting up the feud with Savage and Flair. So Flair,
and I love that feud. So this was like the peak of the show for me.
Yeah, Flair had already been on television. He just couldn't wrestle because he was retired, but he was at Super Brawl 5. He did
right.
He did participate at Super Brawl 5, and he caused the disqualification in the main event. So he was involved on TV. I wonder. So there was an issue with Flair, who had the book at this point. He was doing the booking. He got into it with management over Randy Savage because supposedly, and this is according to Wade in the newsletter, that Savage wanted control over his character similar to that of Hulk Hogan. And Flair got into a spat with management about that. So I started to put two and two together last night, and I'm starting to think, one of Savage's first gimmicks in WWF was being abusive verbally to Elizabeth. So was this a little dig at Randy Savage that, well, you abused a woman, at one point in your life, so I'm going to dress like a woman and attack you. You know what I mean? Like a little bit of an under.
That's seems like a little bit of a stretch to me. I mean, I get your logic, but I don't know if it was that deep. It just seemed weird that he went to all of that trouble. When in reality he could have just shown up.
It's not like he keeps it a secret. I mean, he reveals himself.
Yes.
So it's not like a secret.
And as I said, they had announced he was going to be in Vader's corner. So it wasn't like people weren't already expecting Flair to be there. Like he was having to sneak into the show. Like, no, he's going to be in the main event. So,
right. Azan, maybe he was living out a fantasy. I mean, hey, listen, to each his own. As far as
I don't want to think about Ric Flair's fantasies, but
no. We don't need to. As far as Tenta goes, having watched back some of Tenta's matches, look, we're not going to mistake him for somebody that's going to have a 5-star match and main event a show with, the best wrestler in the world. But I thought for a big man, I thought in general, he was a good worker, of people of his size. I mean,
yeah, he was fine. I mean, he's certainly better than some people his size. So,
I mean, he's certainly better than his partner that's going to be accepting the Hall of Fame induction this year. Uncle Fred Ottman there.
Yeah. How the natural disasters got in before demolition is beyond me, but again, topic for another day.
Yeah, that's certainly a topic for another day and something I've been texting with my friends about. Yeah, I mean, and even Todd brought it up on the Fix last week. And for those of you not VIP, I'm talking about the VIP exclusive show, The Fix with Todd Martin. PWTorch.com/GoVIP is how you can listen to that. And I can't recommend it enough. Mostly for his time in Japan, and for his work in the US. I mean, I thought, between like him and Bam Bam Bigelow and Vader, I mean, I think those are the guys, in that time period that worked really well as big men, as opposed to like, one-man gang or, Uncle Fred Ottman over there, Come on. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Yeah. No, he was bad. Kamala was always a good, good worker for his size. So, I put him in the good category. Just a couple of highlights here. There was a hot start by Savage. Savage slaps Avalanche, which he did at the last pay-per-view, and that got a big pop. And one thing throughout the show, we didn't mention this. One of the stories that was weaved throughout the show and talked about in several matches, they didn't know the whereabouts of Jimmy Hart.
Yes. Yeah, Jimmy Hart was MIA.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thought was he was kidnapped by Vader. And that's talked about.
Why would anybody want to kidnap Jimmy Hart? Like,
that's kind of the point, and we'll get to that.
Unless you have a big roll of duct tape you can put over his mouth.
Right. And then Bobby Heenan throughout the show, I'm going to send somebody back. I'm going to ask my people to go look for him. I'm going to ask. What's that?
His assistant Woody.
I'm going to ask my yeah, exactly. Let's see. At one point, there was a drop kick by Avalanche. I thought that was impressive. Savage was on the outside a lot. looked like he was going for the axe handle at one point, but Avalanche was not in position. Savage failed at a sunset flip. And then Avalanche just sits on him, and then he avoids the Avalanche drop. Was it the earthquake drop? It was the Avalanche. By the way, I made this comment at the last pay-per-view review. I think somebody needed to explain to John Tenta that an avalanche is not, you don't have to jump around and shake the ground. An avalanche that's snow. Like he's still doing like earthquake.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was force of habit.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, I'm just being a wise ass. I mean, could they have called him Earthquake Evans? That was his dark match name. That was his dark match name in 1980.
Earthquake Evans. Wow.
It was Earthquake Evans, managed by Slick in a dark match.
Wow.
Yeah. So the Quaker, I don't know, but we don't
Quaker. Then he would have had to dress like the guy in the Quaker Oats box.
Oh God. Oh Lord.
Another thing I was gonna say, Tenta was 31.
Yeah.
31.
Amazing. I always figured he was older.
Arn was, I think, 35.
Yeah.
Like two guys who look like they're in their mid 50s, like for basically their entire careers.
Yeah. Tenta always felt old. We did mention the finish. So both men are on the outside, and what appears to be a woman attacks Savage. Then they do a ref bump. And then in the ring, he reveals himself as Ric Flair, and then he and Avalanche double team Savage. By the way, Bobby Heenan keeps saying, I know who it is. So he's, I don't know. I felt like Bobby was just like, this is so freaking stupid, Rick. Just take your damn wig off, please.
Right.
I felt like Bobby was losing patience in this match. Like, Rick, just take the stupid wig off.
Let's get there. Come on.
And well, I'll say that for, I have a comment about Ric Flair. I'll save it for later. Wade's rating, 2.25, quote, while it lasted, it was much better than it looked on paper. The finish, though, left a lot to be desired because of the nature of the Anything Goes pay-per-view, although Flair somehow made it entertaining to see him in drag with women's makeup cake on his face.
Yeah, I mean, he went all the way with it. I'll give him that. And
Flair, this is a time where I think Flair was between a rock and a hard place. And I think he's just basically doing what he needs to do. What do you think he needs to do, to make this work?
Yeah. And I mean, between having to try to book around Hulk Hogan's ego, which is, a Herculean task, he'd also sort of been pushed off TV for a while because, Hogan wanted the playground to himself, basically. And so, Flair's basically, between him and Sting are like the twin heartbeats of the company. And one of them is just relegated to being off TV. And now he's, making his comeback. But yeah, it was not, he didn't have a whole lot of options. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. My good friend Justin Girardi in the chat. Earthquake Evans ? Maybe Typhoon Thomas. I'll see myself out. Justin, you are the man.
Well, in a couple of months he becomes a shark.
Oh God.
So.
Oh Lord. Yeah, that's in my notes. What do I say? Savage has a world title run in his future, while Avalanche lands in the water and becomes shark.
Yep.
I guess all that snow melts.
Exactly.
That's the gimmick. That's why he becomes shark. The snow melts and he's in the water and he's got to find his way. Okay, I'll really see myself out.
And then he had to paint shark teeth in his beard. Like, how annoying that must have been.
To quote my job, Zach, I might have to go missed approach on this 95 WCW. I might have to divert. I think I might have to divert to 95 ECW. I mean, the listeners, make a comment if you wish. I mean, if you want me to, change destination to go to 95 ECW.
You're already in it, man. You might as well just
because my God, this is, and it's crazy. I feel like we're having low hanging fruit conversation, but it's just crazy to me that, Hogan, Savage, trying to capture that 80s WWF magic to put themselves on the map. And every pay-per-view that I've seen, I mean, I reviewed Halloween Havoc, I reviewed Starrcade, I did Super Bowl. We're doing this. There's just not a good pay-per-view.
Now, I will say Slamboree was a little bit better. The Great American Bash was actually a good show.
Okay.
And that's hope. Hogan was not on that show.
Okay. You giving me hope.
It's amazing how that works, like how much the show just improves when, it's built around Randy Savage and Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Instead of, Hulk Hogan. And then it kind of goes back the other direction after that and just kind of precipitously gets worse. Lenny, with one of the all-time weirdest Starrcades. That'll be fun to cover if you've never seen Starrcade '95.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to. I gotta see this. I mean, I joke, but I gotta see this through because I want to. I want to study. It's more studying this year.
Yeah,
it's really what it's all about.
You want to become an expert in the Dungeon of Doom.
Oh God, oh dear Lord. Sean Plickta in the chat. Frank, what's up, and Zach? It's good to see you on here, my friend.
Good morning.
Good morning, and Justin. 95 WCW really highlights why the business needed to change the way wrestling looked and go more towards reality-based programs.
What? King Curtis hollering, shouting, "Sullivan, my son," was not quality entertainment? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. It's that's what Justin brings up is a good point. And I even talked about that. Tyler Sage and I, several years ago, covered 95 Survivor Series, and there were a lot of gimmicks on that show, and a lot of people on that show that would become better versions of themselves, in the subsequent years. And it feels like both promotions are kind of hanging on to the old ways, to Justin's point. Of gimmicks and crazy matches and crazy finishes and stuff like that. And people were just getting sick of it.
Exactly. And here's the irony about the Survivor Series 95. Best thing on that show was the women's match. 3 weeks later, the women's division is dead.
Yeah.
Because they fire Medusa and the title goes dormant.
Right. I thought you were going to say the opening match, the Marty Jannetty or the Razor, the Razor contingent versus I think it was 1 2 not 1 2 3 Kid. Oh no, Razor wasn't in the match. No, it was like Marty Jannetty's team against 1 2 3 Kid's team.
Any match with Marty Jannetty is not the best match.
Well, I don't know. That was a good one. But the women, what I'll say about the women's match on that show, McMahon and Perfect just shit on it the entire time. Like that's the issue with it.
That's the problem. Like, people weren't taking it seriously. Like, it's the obviously best match on your show. They are like laying into each other, and you're just sort of not really paying any attention. But I digress.
Exactly. All right, so the other half of this feud, it's Big Bubba Rogers. We'll keep this thing rolling here. Big Bubba Rogers against Sting. As I mentioned, this is a continuation of the feud between Sting and Macho Man and Big Bubba and Avalanche. This goes a little under 14 minutes. This is actually the only clean finish on the pay-per-view, and it's Sting taking the fall, which I found interesting.
Now,
go ahead.
I would argue the next match was technically a clean finish, but there's a whole lot with that finish. But back.
Yeah, this is the only straightforward match. If you want to,
there you go. That's it.
If you want to put it like that, Justin McMahon shitting on women. Nah, he'd never do that.
Oh God.
Oh boy. Oh Lord. I know where Justin's going with that one.
you teed that one up.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So the finish of this match, Sting avoids a splash into the corner and attempts to slam Bubba, but then he falls. They had talked about his knee injury. I don't remember Sting having a knee injury earlier in the year.
No, it was in 1990. They were talking about when he blew his knee out in 1990.
Okay. That's what I was to say. I don't remember anything in early '95. It was just something they were kind of referring.
Previous history of knee problems.
Sure. Okay. So Wade had this at 2 1/4. Quote, a good back and forth with Sting doing his usual solid job against a big man. Bubba is clearly better suited for a heel role in a match, as this was one of his better matches in WCW. I'll be honest with you, I thought it was fine.
That's pretty much, that's exactly what I said. It was fine. Good even. That was my note.
It's just interesting. I think, between Sting and the Macho Man, they are the two guys that are in the most interesting position in the company at this point, with Hogan in as the top babyface, because what are they really going to do other than just tag up, have personal matches and whatnot? I mean, that's really all that's going to happen.
Yeah, there's a ceiling there. I will say the finish was a bit anticlimactic, with Bubba just falling on top of Sting and getting the pin. I'm like, oh, that was it.
Yeah.
And the thing about Bubba is it's always in WCW. It's just he came in as the boss at the end of '93.
Yeah.
And then had maybe the most clever character change that I've ever seen, where Nick Bockwinkel literally just stripped him of the name and the nightstick and everything, and said, "You're not the boss anymore," and he becomes the guardian angel. Like, right. They didn't insult people. They didn't take him off TV for 6 weeks and then bring him back and pretend like he was never this other thing. Like, they didn't insult your intelligence. They literally just changed his gimmick right in front of you. And then he goes from the guardian angel to Big Bubba, and it kind of blows up the whole thing, because it's like, he'd already been in WCW. Why didn't he just come back in as Big Bubba?
Yeah.
Like, you came in as the boss, which was already like acting like he hadn't been in WCW before, and then he just goes back to the original Big Bubba gimmick. So it's like,
I think in fairness, I think maybe they were trying to kind of have some continuity with his character, where, okay, he's the boss. Well, he was the big boss man. He was a popular guy in the WWF. So let's try to keep that going. That's the only thing I could think of it, though, because he comes in, in 93?
The end of 93, he debuts at Starrcade. He takes the place of Davey Boy, who got fired.
Okay. Davey Boy getting fired? No, really?
I know. Shocker, right?
So that's my only guess with the boss, trying to bring him in to try to keep that continuity going. And then they got into the legal issue with WWF because they had the rights to the big boss man. They thought it was too close.
Well, it was.
So, yeah. I mean, in all fairness, and in hindsight, I wonder if that might have been the time to just take him off TV and then just bring him back as the guardian angel. Not the guardian angel, as Big Bubba Rogers.
I mean, that would have made sense. Or you didn't take him on TV. It's like, I'm not the boss. You know what? No, I'm not the boss. I'm Big Bubba. And like, have him reassume his previous identity. But going through the weird guardian angel thing, only for him to end up being Big Bubba again, just kind of felt, it felt a little silly to me.
Yeah.
But I did find it amusing that, like, as the match went on, his shirt got more and more and more and more open.
I have that in my notes that Ray Traylor sure liked to wrestle with like open button-down shirts.
Yes. He had no shame in his game.
He had no shame. I mean, jeez. That sure changes in his second run at WWF, though.
Hey, right?
As he's in like
the black jacket.
Yeah, like honestly, like he looked like he could have been a member of the Shield.
Yes.
Right.
The original member of the Shield, right?
Here's an alternate timeline for you. So they strip Ray of the boss gimmick. I think it was Slamboree 94. It was either Slamboree or Spring Stampede. I can't remember.
Stampede.
Was Spring Stampede against Vader?
Yeah.
Okay. Strip him of the boss, take him off TV, bring him back as Big Bubba. How about that as your Starrcade main event instead of Ed Leslie?
That's an improvement. I mean, Hogan versus the Guardian Angel would be an improvement over Ed Leslie. Like, I don't care what you call Ray Traylor, you put him in there against Hogan, it's an improvement over Ed Leslie.
Because the alternate timeline we discussed for Starrcade was do the Ed Leslie match on like a Clash or TV or whatever, and do Hogan against Avalanche.
I mean, that would probably still work better. I mean, clearly Tenta can work a little bit. I mean, at least that wouldn't have been as, mind-numbing as Ed Leslie in a main event of the biggest pay-per-view of the year.
Yeah. And there was history with Hogan and Tenta. I mean,
yes.
You go back to 1990, so, which is a feud that never really gets paid off, in my opinion. Not that WCW is responsible for paying that off, but
yeah.
All right. We got a little off the match here. Just getting back to it. Let's see. At one point, Sting throws Bubba's hat. Bobby takes issue with it. Schiavone goes, "It's uncensored, Bobby." Bobby goes, "I know that, Schiavone." That's where I felt like Bobby just had enough of the show. Like he just wanted to be done.
And the other thing before I forget that made me laugh was Schiavone called Sting one of the great scientific wrestlers. And look, you're not gonna find a bigger Sting fan than me. My Blue Sky handle is literally Dr. Little Stinger.
Yep.
But Sting was not a scientific wrestler ever.
No.
So you're not who are you trying to fool, Tony?
Yeah, no, I don't get that at all. They do bring up Sting's knee injury. We talked about that. At one point, Bubba does his signature, like he slides to the outside with his opponent hanging on the ropes and does a punch. Kind of like the 619 almost, like where the opponent has to sit there. There's a little bit of selling, but it's still a cool move, no matter how you look at it.
It's not as bad as the double stomp in the corner where somebody having to hold themselves up.
Yeah.
To take it. It's not quite as bad.
Talk about some core strength.
No kidding.
Yeah. So
couldn't be me.
All right. That's Sting and Big Bubba Rogers. Let's see. Sting does get his win back from Bubba at Slamboree, which I'll probably cover. And Bubba actually faces Hulk Hogan on the first Nitro.
Yes, I remember that.
Yep. So, and then Tony, speaking of Slamboree, Tony Schiavone is advertising Slamboree, a Legends reunion. That's what Slamboree had been for the previous two. Both of those Slamborees were covered here at Pro Wrestling Then.
Yes. And this would be the last, I believe, the last WCW Hall of Fame induction ever. I don't think they did it the next year.
Yeah, let's see. So Slamboree, the wonders of the internet.
Because the next year, Slamboree, they brought back Battle Bowl, they did the finals or whatever of Battle Bowl at that Slamboree because DDP won the ring, and that was the the final pay-per-view before the NWO started.
Yes.
I don't think they did another Hall of Fame induction after that. So they did 3 classes.
Oh, wow. And they did this to determine the world number one contender for the world championship. Look at that. Wow. So DDP was getting his push. So you get one more. You get the Great American Bash. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the one where they put Bischoff through the stage.
Yes.
The Outsiders put Bischoff through the stage. So,
but I mean, at that point, what I'm saying is the NWO were already because like I think was it the next night after Slamboree that Scott Hall showed up, so like that's when that angle started. So like Slamboree was the last pay-per-view before the NWO angle began. That was kind of my
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, this is the last Legends reunion that they did.
Correct. And let's see who gets inducted while we're on the topic here.
Well, I know Angelo Poffo was part of he became part of the Flair Savage angle.
Wow. So yes. So I was not watching WCW regularly, but I do I was peripherally aware of what was going on, and I do remember his father being involved. I do remember that. So, this is interesting. So Wahoo McDaniel, Angelo Poffo, Terry Funk, Antonio Inoki, Dusty Rhodes,
was Gordon Solie.
Gordon Solie, and Big John Studd.
One of these things is not like the other.
Who is Big John Studd getting inducted into the WCW?
That's what I'm going. I'm like, wait, I'm with you on everybody till you get to Big John Studd. I'm like, did he wrestle in the AWA?
I know he was in the AWA.
Okay.
And Wade talks about that, but WCW is acknowledged. That's interesting. I'll have to examine that when I review Slamboree.
I wonder. I know he died around this time, so I wonder if it was like a
more of a respectful posture.
Yeah.
I mean, you bring up a good point because he does pass away in March. Actually, he passes away the day after this show.
Okay, there we go. So that might be why it's like, well, the honor since he just passed. So that
might have been more of like a respectful.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in Mid-Atlantic. He does okay. Yeah, no, actually, he's in Mid-Atlantic, and he does challenge Dusty Rhodes for the NWA World Title. So there is an NWA connection.
Okay.
So it makes a lot more. It makes a lot more sense now. So okay. Good old John Minton. All right, here we go. Falls Count Anywhere. By the way, one thing we should note, just going back, we forgot to mention it. The titles were not on the line at this pay-per-view. In the boxing versus wrestler match, Arn Anderson was the television champion. The title was not on the line. So, and here at a Falls Count Anywhere, well, Texas Tornado tag Falls Count Anywhere match, the tag titles were not on the line. Harlem Heat being the champs, they were not defending them. So this feud goes back to Starrcade 94. The Nasties had won via DQ, but more infamously at the previous pay-per-view, Super Brawl 5, they did the Dusty finish, where it appeared that the Nasty Boys had won the tag championship, only to have a second referee come out and disqualify the Nasties for throwing Booker T over the top. And let me tell you, did Wade Keller have a few comments about that?
The old over the top rule.
Yeah. Oh my! And did I? Oh God, it's so stupid. Okay. This match goes a little under 9 minutes. So they fight to an area where they set up basically fake concession stands. Like one, it's like, I mean, I went to carnivals in like the 80s and the 90s with my parents, and some of the stands that I would see at those carnivals were more sophisticated than this. Like,
yeah, I mean, this was. I kind of chuckle when Wade complains about like fake concession stands or whatever, but like it's usually because there's nobody around and like it's clearly like staged.
Right.
This was fake. Like there's a difference between like staged concession area and this was like a step away from it being painted on the wall. Like this was bad.
Yeah. Oh no, it was low rent. It was, I mean, I have an alternate plan for this match, but basically Booker T is pinned by Jerry Sags near the broken funnel cake. They have one for like funnel cake and one for lemonade, right?
Cotton candy.
Oh, cotton candy. Yeah, that's what it was. And and the camera, he doesn't even get the pin.
Yeah, I literally had to. The bell rang and I was kind of with Shivani like, wait, the match is over. What? I had to rewind it twice to figure. Oh, that's the finish. That was Nick Patrick was over there counting like 1, 2, 3 on the that slam. This. I like a good Nasty Boys brawl.
Yeah.
Emphasis on good. This was not good.
Right.
Harlem Heat or not, this is not their style. I did enjoy the promo earlier in the show. Sherry's great. I love Sherry with Harlem Heat. She's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
She's probably tougher than any of the men in this match anyway. But and that bump she took at the end of the like after the finish, and she goes like sliding onto the ground in the muck and just like slams onto the concrete. I'm like, that might have been the stiffest bump of the night right there.
Yeah.
Because I mean, just straight back to concrete, no give. But yeah, this was a mess.
Yeah.
Figuratively and literally. Like this was not good. That's all. This was. I'm just like, I don't know. I would have done some other kind of match with these two teams, but Harlem Heat is not built for like, the kind of brawls like the Nasty Boys and Public Enemy had, in the year. Like that worked. This did not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I was wondering, like, do you do a match with like table, not TLC, obviously. We're not doing that yet, but like, you could do a false count anywhere, but you don't need to set up concession. Like, I don't understand what that added to the match.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't understand.
Like literally, just to clarify, like we're talking about, like they hit each other with cotton candy at a fake concession stand. Okay, and then they're hitting each other with popcorn, cotton candy, mustard, fruit punch. Bobby goes, he turns around. Pardon me, does anybody have any Grey Poupon? And then he goes, the Nasties are used to this. This is how they eat at home. He's just sitting there like, what the hell am I doing here, man? Like,
yeah, it's
yeah, I mean, there was some action in the ring. I mean, there was nothing I didn't note much. There wasn't really anything noteworthy. There was a spike pile driver at one point to Knobs, and then they restrained Jerry Saggs at one point for a kick to the face. But yeah, it just the big point of the match is them fighting in the fake stands. I mean, it just made it look. And I'll read Wade's comment here: 2 3/4 stars, which that might be
that's generous.
Yeah. It was again a very novel match and a lot of fun to watch, but also embarrassing and hokey. The first half in the ring saw some good in-ring and ringside action, and the last half was all comedy out of a bad Saturday Night Live skit. It was obvious that this concession stand was purely there as a prop to be destroyed in this match, since the fans were cornered off from it, which took away from the spontaneity supposedly going on. There was zero authenticity, yet an insulting impression that we were supposed to believe it was a real concession stand. I mean, that's...
Like, were we supposed to believe it was a real concession stand? It was literally against a wall.
Yeah. I mean, the idea is it looks... What Wade is talking about there, and he talks about it nowadays with current shows where, like, whether it's AEW or WWE, you'll see wrestlers go off into like the
concourse,
and it's already like, fenced off or whatever. There's already security guards there, and it doesn't feel like something that's actually happening. It feels like something that's planned. And to plan like hokiness, to plan stuff like that, just kind of like takes you out of the moment. It takes you out of feeling like, wow, like this is really happening. It's like,
sure,
you put that there on purpose. And for what? Like, who benefited from that? Like, just let these guys fight. Let them fight. Like, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, and I covered the show, I think it might have been Spring Stampede or Slamboree, the Nasties against Cactus Jack and Kevin Sullivan.
Yeah, that worked. That was a really good match.
That worked. And they just fought to the outside. They fought on the ramp, and I think Cactus Jack took a pretty good bump in that match, but that worked, and that's all that it needed to be. I mean, like you said earlier, I'd like to sit down with who planned this, between a King of the Road match and this, what did they think what do they think they were gaining out of it?
And on paper, a false count anywhere match isn't necessarily like a bad idea, but the idea of like we're gonna do this obviously intentionally like fake concession stand built against a wall that we're not even trying to pass off as real is it just I'm like, why? That take out the concession stand nonsense and you probably would have had a decent match.
Just, like I said, just have him fight to the outside and fight to wherever. Let him get a pinfall on the ramp and be done with it. Call it a day, Would have been fine. By the way, I forgot to bring up the interview earlier. Mike Tenay had interviewed Harlem Heat, and then Sherry's talking, and he pulls the mic away. And I don't know if you picked up on it, but Sherry gave him the look of death. Like, what the hell are you doing, man?
Oh yeah, of those I guess 5 people. Sherry's the one I don't want to make angry. Like,
yeah,
she's the one I'm scared of.
Right. And he did it several times. I mean, I don't know if he was just nervous. Like, I kind of want to give him the benefit of the doubt here. I don't know if he was just, okay, I'm doing the interview, so I want to make sure I make my time cues and everything like that. So go ahead.
And speaking of interviews, I'm sure Wade hated the Nasty Boys interview because Brian Knobs literally yelled through the entire thing. I mean, it was just screaming at the top of his lungs for no apparent reason.
Yeah. No, he and Sags do the same thing in the interview, and it's a lot of yelling. I mean, that is kind of what the Nasty Boys do, but
like that was a lot even for me. I'm like, my gosh.
Yeah. He talks about that. I think it was Public Enemy where he talks about them like yelling or whatever and being kind of goofy, but then they get serious, and just that wave on which you go with them makes it effective. Whereas the Nasty Boys, they're just screaming and yelling. So yeah, I didn't have any notes on that. There was also an interview with Savage too, where Tenay like just snickers at him. That's just, yeah.
A small part of me wishes Missy Hyatt was still managing the Nasty Boys because Sherry fighting Missy Hyatt would have been hilarious. Yeah. It would have been completely one-sided. Yeah. And Missy would have been in trouble, but it would have been fun.
Yeah. Okay. We move on.
And that was the show, right?
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. No, we still got a main event. Sorry. We still got a main event to talk about. So Tenay attempts to interview Vader, but it turns into a shouting match. Ric Flair comes in. He still had makeup from an earlier skit. Don't know why he couldn't get the makeup off, but hey, they recap the Super Brawl 5 match. That's where Ric Flair gets involved, causes Vader to be disqualified. And they also show WCW Saturday Night clips where Hogan had attacked Vader. Babyface Hogan had attacked Vader during a match against the Patriot. And they also featured Hogan with Jimmy Hart discussing his ultimate surprise. We talked about that earlier, which we already knew was going to be the Renegade. So not sure why they kept bringing it up. So this is a leather strap match. Hulk Hogan, world champion, with Jimmy Hart eventually, and the Renegade against Vader. The world championship was not on the line. This feud goes back to Starrcade 94, where Vader, who was the U.S. champ at that point, and the number 1 contender of the world title, gets in Hogan's face and challenges him. We mentioned the Super Brawl 5 match. This goes a little under 18 and a half minutes, and it's won by...
Yeah, it felt like it went a little under 36. Like,
it sure did. Yep.
Good Lord.
Let me give you Wade's rating on this. He has it at a 2. creative as heck, but the creativity was born
That
out of
is
all the wrong reasons
very generous.
and thus fell flat. The content of the match was acceptable. The finish was not. So here's the issue with this match. Hogan didn't want to do the job. Okay, and this is in the newsletter. So Vader turns around and says, fuck you, I'm not doing it either. How's that?
Exactly.
I can't blame Vader.
I can't blame him either. Like, I'm not, you want to play ball? Why should I play ball? Like,
and so what they do for the finish, Ric Flair, who's the booker at this point, who's between a rock and a hard place, decides, all right, Hogan could put me on the strap. And that's what happens. And Hogan tags all four corners with Ric Flair strapped to him, not Vader. And Hogan is declared your winner. So a couple of notes here to talk about. There's no Jimmy Hart initially, and they talk about that. But then Renegade, we knew was going to be in Hogan's corner, comes out like a minute later after everybody's introduced to some imitation warrior music and cheap makeup.
well, it was an R. He had an R painted, like instead of the warrior symbol, obviously, it was just a big R that was painted on his face.
Yeah. And then a few minutes in, Jimmy Hart actually makes his way down. His clothes are partially torn off. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, so, like, I could understand kidnapping Jimmy Hart, right? But like Hogan, I don't even think Hogan talked about it. Well, actually, you know what? The interview that he did before the match, that was pre-taped, wasn't it? Because Jimmy Hart was in that interview.
It was pre-taped.
Okay. So how stupid is that? Like if Jimmy Hart was kidnapped, why are you showing a pre-taped interview?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the whole point should be to show Hogan like worried about his manager.
Right.
But yet you show a pre-tape with Jimmy Hart, and I think they had the Renegade in the smoke behind him.
Yeah. Well, that was earlier.
That was earlier. Okay.
It was earlier.
Either way,
and they had like no audio, but and I wish I apologize.
Either way, it was ridiculous.
They basically they didn't. You know, the arc throughout the show was they didn't know where Jimmy Hart was, which whatever. Okay. I mean, to me, I think that's dumb. But if you're doing that to mess with Hogan, at least be consistent with it, you know, or don't even show an interview with Hogan. Just show Hogan coming out to the ring saying, where's Jimmy? You know, like keep the continuity of the story. Stick to your story, whether it sucks or not, stick to your story.
Exactly.
So, all right. So, you know, we talked about the main points. Your thoughts on the match.
Well, first of all, if you've seen one Hogan match, you've pretty much seen every Hogan match. So that was my first thought. We already talked about the refusing to lose to Vader thing, and let's be very clear. Vader was the top star of this company for 2 years before Hogan got there. This monster heel who's literally just beating people to a pulp. You know, whether it's retiring Nikita Koloff, or power bombing Cactus Jack on the concrete, or what, I mean, just beating people to a pulp. Hogan gets there, and I'm sure you covered it. He no-sells a power bomb at the Clash of the Champions in January, and basically just begins his inexplicable,
The Hulk up routine.
Yeah, well, not even Hulk up, but his inexplicable desire to bury Vader for the remainder of '95. I don't understand. He has this whole refusing to lose to Vader and going back and selling the power bomb. It is Hulk Hogan's fundamental lack of understanding how wrestling is supposed to work, because you have to make your opponent look like a threat to make you, if you're going to win in the end, that makes your win in the end that much sweeter. Toni Storm has basically gotten her ass kicked every week by Megan Bayne since this thing started. I mean, on one show or the other, she's literally like on the ground with Megan Bain standing over her after the end of the segment.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so Megan Bain looks like a world beater at this point. Like, Tony Storm can't touch her. Hogan didn't grasp that concept. And, and it started with the no selling of the power bomb. Then we get to here with neither guy wanting to lose to the other. And you've got Flair and poor Ric Flair. I mean, first of all, first thing he has to sell for the Renegade at the beginning of this match, which, good Lord, I mean, Flair having to sell for the Renegade, how the mighty have fallen. I mean, I guess it's a step better than Arn Anderson, who had to job to the Renegade in like a month and drop the TV title.
Yep.
And I mean, that's even more of an insult. Because good grief, I mean, that's just under no, like, the idea of Renegade beating Arn Anderson is still just makes my head hurt.
Yeah.
But Flair had to sell for the Renegade. Then he had to come back in and do the make Vader look ridiculous, because Vader had Hogan beat at one point. Like, he had him 1, 2, 3. I mean, I don't like the dragging to the corner leather strap matches anyway, but he had hit 3 corners. He could have easily hit the 4th corner and been out of there. But no, Flair wants him to like splash Hogan off the top rope or something instead of just winning the match and then doing that. Like, there's no reason, there's no logic to why he couldn't just, why he stopped Vader from winning the match. So Vader looks like a fool for not just winning the match. And then he does some kind of weird somersault instead of, I thought he was going to do a splash, and he does like some weird somersault. And then, Flair has to put the strap on his wrist so Hogan can walk around the turnbuckles and do it that way. I mean, the fact that Hogan's not even getting pinned and he was refusing to do a job. Like, that's just, one thing I will say is at least Bobby Heenan was like not playing ball with this finish. He was like, how is this? How does this work? How is he winning? How can he win this match if Flair's not a participant in the match? Like, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's like, thank goodness for Bobby Heenan for calling out the stupidity and not just like playing along with it.
Right.
Because this was, and then Tony Schiavone, one last thing, Tony Schiavone had the temerity, the unmitigated gall to like bring up the White Castle of Fear strap match with Vader and Sting from Super Bowl '93 while this monstrosity was going on. I'm like, that was an excellent, that was up until like Ricky Starks and Bryan Danielson a couple of years ago, the best strap match of all time, probably. And you're bringing it up in the same breath that you're talking about, that you're calling this match, which is not going to be anything resembling that.
Yeah.
Wade was very generous with his score there.
Yeah. We get some masked men in this match too. That was a thing for WCW around this time period.
That was Arn, right?
Yeah. Well, the first one was Arn, so he taps 3 corners, but then a masked man comes out and attacks Renegade with a wooden chair, not a steel chair, a wooden chair.
WCW love their wooden chairs. So.
Oh yeah. Yep. And Flair pulls Vader out of the ring at this point, who had missed a cannonball off the ropes. You mentioned that earlier. Flair hits Hogan with a wooden chair twice, but then Hogan does his Hulk up routine, and that's when he drags Flair to all 4 corners. The post-match, a masked man comes out again, this time with a steel chair, and we're thinking, oh boy. But then Arn Anderson walks out with his... between Flair and Anderson, between the two of them on this pay-per-view, man, he's got his hands tied, he's got his legs tied, he's got like his mouth gagged, and he's like walking out. The camera actually misses the masked man hitting Flair and Vader, but then got there in time to see that it was Randy Savage.
Right.
So
the camera work was not great on this show.
Camera work? No, not at all. But yeah, I think we could summarize and the renegade involvement too was off as well because like he actually takes like a minute. Um, he takes a minute when when Macho Man comes out. He takes like a minute to get involved. So his involvement was like he wasn't even really a factor except for blocking Flair. Like you mentioned, Flair having to sell for the Renegade. He's the one that's blocking Flair throughout the match. But then at the end, it's like he's a non-factor. So I just, yeah. I mean, I guess he served his purpose if he was to cut off Flair, but I don't know. It just didn't work. But I think we could summarize though in this main event that it just kind of showed you where things were at this point. Where they were from a booking standpoint with Hogan, the position in which Hogan put the company. Zach, we talk about, 99 and 2000 and 2001 being the downfall of WCW. I think, to quote Vince McMahon, I think they injected a lethal dose of poison in this company around this time with Hogan because it just tell me, it does get better. I mean, WCW in general. I mean, it does get exciting with the NWO, but even when the effects of that wear off, and they just keep the NWO story going past Starrcade
with no real finish. Yeah, they didn't have a wrap up for that story in mind. And yeah, Hogan, like when you bring a guy in and just basically give him carte blanche, and he can bring in his has-been friends, and you replace your up-and-coming talent with these far less talented, most of them past their prime, if they had a prime. I'm looking at you, Ed Leslie. Has-been friends. Like, what are we doing here? Like, it's just like you had Austin and Dustin and Mick and, Johnny B. Bad, if you want to say. Like, I mean, you had some talent that Sting was in Flair. Until he got hurt, you had Ricky Steamboat. You had this talent, and you replace it with Ed Leslie and John Tenta and Jim Duggan, and and it's just like and Hogan is just able to do whatever he wants. He completely, like I said, cuts the legs out from under the biggest monster heel in the company.
Yeah.
Almost immediately, and
so let me ask you this.
Fired.
Let me ask you this. Is there an alternate timeline that exists? Let's just say Hogan is not selfish, and let's say he's amicable and decides to work with the company and decides, let me actually do something for the better of the business. Is there an alternate timeline where Vader actually wins the title, right? And then maybe there's one match we never really got. We never really got Hogan versus Savage in the iteration that we got in the WWF. We would get it later with the two of them flipped, with Savage as the babyface and Hogan as the heel, but even that didn't turn out. Like, is there an alternate timeline where Vader wins the title, then loses it to Savage, and then we get Savage Hogan?
I mean, that sounds a lot better to me than what we got, but I don't see Hogan playing ball.
No,
that's not in his DNA.
Yeah, that's the problem when you do like these alternate timelines. Like, you want to try to, see what might have worked better, but unfortunately, that's what we always come back to. In general, reader feedback was not good, and in fact, and this is edition 326 of the Torch newsletter. So for you VIP members, you have access to this if you go into the into back issues of Pro Wrestling Torch newsletters. I think if you go to it, like it comes up as like 2015, because I think what Wade was doing was 30 years ago, or I'm sorry, 20 years ago. he would post like that's why I couldn't find like 1994 newsletters, and what he told me was no, 20 years later we did look backs. So it's it takes a minute to get there, but you find it anyway. It's edition number 326. I'll just give you some of the ratings that people gave this: 3.0, 2.0. This is out of 10. 3.0. One guy was a 1. One guy rated it a 0. 1. I guess Pat McNeil was a reader before he became a columnist. Gave it a 1. Some dude gave it a 7.
Was he watching the same show?
Yeah. But then I
want whatever he was on while he was watching it. It must have made it a much more.
Yeah, I'll read this review. It had momentum going with it, but it had poor spots. I was disappointed neither Hogan nor Vader did a job. Well, do you know the industry? Since when is Avalanche too big of a personality to do a job for Savage? I mean, that's fair. I don't understand that either, especially if it's supposed to be uncensored. With all the outside excitement, Hogan versus Vader was the best match. If I want to see a good fight, I'll turn on Larry, Moe, and Curly. So why are you rating it a 7?
Yeah, whatever he's on, I want some up because
that's a bad write up.
That's like a hallucinogen or something. Like he's.
I'll read you what Pat said. Right. So assuming this is the same Pat McNeil, a group of us were planning to go to Augusta this Saturday to see WCW and have a good time. We're not going. We're boycotting WCW for the time being. It was horrible.
That's a more accurate write-up.
Yep. Also in the Torch newsletter, in below the bottom. So this is what Wade used to do, below the bottom line. And the headline of it is more than ever, it's time for Flair to take a stand. And a lot of, if you read a lot of the write-ups, a lot of people had lost respect for Flair because they felt like he was kind of being subservient to Hulk Hogan at this point, and he wasn't Ric Flair anymore. And I can understand that, I could certainly understand that. And I'm just going through it here. Blah, 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 blah. Here, don't feel bad for Flair. He's making good money doing what he's told. Even though he is supposed to be the man in charge of booking, he is straitjacketed by the politics of Hulk Hogan and Vader. Hogan won't lose under any circumstances. And he doesn't in 1995. He loses one DQ match to the Giant. To Paul White.
Who you have to mention he'd actually killed like 30 minutes before.
Yeah.
You have to mention that. The Giant came back from the dead.
Yeah. Hogan won't lose under any circumstances and continues to find ways to justify it based on his star status. Vader spent the last week making it clear if Hogan won't do a job for him, he won't do a job for Hogan. And that's all fair.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I'm just going through this. Here. The Flair finish wasn't clever. It was cheap. Hogan's ego-gratifying method of booking isn't heroic. It's cowardice and lame and repetitive and boring. A lot of fans find it entertaining, but it's so limiting to restrict yourself to just those fans. The only problem is a well-executed angle involving a horribly out-of-date, and this is another thing, too, with the Renegade, horribly out-of-date fake Ultimate Warrior muscle freak who doesn't sell to Flair is a turnoff to fans. Let's see. WCW management justifies their booking by the reaction of the fans in the building who are wrapped up in the action, but it's not the casual fans who are handed free tickets to make the building look full. Who matter. The fans who matter are those who pay for each and every pay-per-view. They look at WCW with a more critical eye than even WCW officials do. And I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah.
Here, this is the last thing I'll read. Flair does owe more to the industry that has made him a millionaire than to stand by and give in to mockery out of WCW, not to mention making a mockery of his on-camera character that used to be what people cited as a reason they had a passion for wrestling in the first place.
Right.
Flair probably thinks he is the good guy in this situation, making a bad situation better by agreeing to lose to Hogan, but as long as WCW can count on Flair to use his rapidly diminishing reputation to get them out of messes, they'll continue to take advantage of his willingness.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you have to stand up for yourself and be like, I've had all I can stand. I can't stand no more.
Yeah.
Popeye.
Yeah. And if Pro Fight DB is accurate, and sometimes I question its accuracy, Hogan, he doesn't lose in 95 at all. Just the one match to the Giant.
That seems right.
Yep. And then you mentioned the sumo. Oh my God, there was a sumo. That's right. There was a monster truck match between
the monster truck match, and he knocked the Giant off the roof of Cobo Hall.
Oh my God!
So the Giant fell to his death, and then rose from the dead to come back in the main event of Halloween Havoc.
Yeah.
This is a thing that happened in WCW.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, yeah. So
that's what you have to look forward to.
Yeah. So let's see. I just want to see real quick the bookers by year. So Flair was booking around this time.
Eventually Kevin Sullivan took over, I think.
It is Sullivan. Okay. It is. That's right. It is Sullivan. And then it's Nash, isn't it?
Well, Sullivan he books forever because he booked his own divorce and all of that. And he books until like 99. And then like Nash got the book for 5 minutes and they realized that was a mistake.
Yeah.
And I forget, I feel like they had one other person and then it went to the Cockroach, who just went ahead and drove it right off the cliff. And that was basically the end of it.
So now if this is a forum, so I just question its accuracy. It goes to, like you said, it goes to Kevin Sullivan with Terry Taylor.
I don't know. Terry Taylor just kind of seemed to exist.
Yeah, he was always kind of in and out. Yeah.
He went from whichever company would pay him that month he worked at. That was kind of Terry Taylor. Whoever was handing him a check, he worked for them. And then they went to Nash.
Yeah, and then they went to Nash between 98 and 99. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense now.
That cup of coffee.
Oh my God. And then they go back to Sullivan with Taylor, and then at the end of 99, and you mentioned the Cockroach, bro, our good bro comes in. My God.
If ever there was like a human being who was responsible for so much garbage in wrestling, it's that man.
Him and Ed Ferrara. And then they quickly
do not understand how he kept getting jobs.
Well, it's funny because they pull the book from him. They give it back to Sullivan. Terry Taylor, and Ed Ferrara. And then they go back to Russo and Bischoff in 2000.
Yes, the reset.
Yeah, I remember that Nitro. I was at my friend's house. I'm like, what? Yeah. And then, oh my God, if this is accurate, John Laurinaitis was on the booking team. Oh God, yeah. That really explains a lot.
Yep.
All right. Well, Zach, are we thumbs up? Are we thumbs down? Or my new rating is middle finger.
I would say this is a thumbs down.
Yeah.
If I'm giving it a number, it's probably like a 2, and that's just based on the Johnny B. Bad match and the Savage and Tinta match and Sting and Bubba. They were all okay, but this as a show was ridiculous.
Yeah, there's nothing. It's funny. There's nothing endearing about this, no. And as bad as
it's memorable for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, exactly. The King of the Road match, the Falls Count Anywhere, the strap match. Talking points for the sake of getting a reaction or whatever is just not good business. But it is what it is. All right. Once again, Zach, you write the AEW Feud Tracker, right? That's what you. Okay. Yeah. And how could the good listeners follow you on social media?
At this point, I'm just on Blue Sky, and it's at Dr. Little Stinger. I think. Well, I forget how Blue Sky works, but that should you put my name in, you'll find me.
Yeah, you just gotta exactly, and it's like it's like at bsky.social or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
it's weird.
still I'm not on social media much myself anymore, but yeah, I have a handle there. It's at Frank Peteani 73. So just spell my name, Frank Peteani 73 at BSKY, whatever. I still have my X account. I barely use it at
Oh,
Frank Peteani.
I have not been on there since November, basically.
Yeah, and Facebook and Instagram as well. So that's how you can follow. I just want to. Sean Plichter was putting up a couple of comments in the chat here. He did bring up one thing when we were kind of diverting to talk about Megan Bain. Megan needs to win, but she won't. Too fast. That's kind of a. And speaking of 95, more so 94, somebody brought up the comparison of it's kind of like a Bret Hart Diesel situation of 94, where Diesel is the upcoming star, Bret's the mainstay champion, and that's kind of what Tony Storm is right now. Megan is certainly going to be a top act for them moving forward. So
Yeah,
just wonder how they're going to handle that finish. It'll be interesting.
I mean, I just think you put Megan Bain over at this point. Like you don't, it kind of cuts her off at the knees. So I think Tony will be fine. As over as she is, she'll be fine. Like it's not gonna hurt her.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of saying now that Tony is a legacy act and she can handle it. So we'll see. All right, Zach. This has been a pleasure. This has been WCW Uncensored 95. Let's be sure to do this again, my friend.
Yes, sir.
And for Zach Barber, I am Torch contributor Frank Peteani, reminding you when you are looking for nostalgia, you have come to the right place where we talk pro wrestling then and now.